3 keys I have that I'm gonna share with you. Number 1, you need to know macros. Number 2, and this is going to crush a lot of people, and this is gut issues. And the final key I have for you, number 3, is an adaptation. This video is gonna be all about how to start a ketogenic diet, how to start the keto diet. And I wanna mention a couple quick things before we jump into 3 keys I have that I'm gonna share with you. So first, the keto diet works really well because it lowers insulin in your body. When you lower insulin, which is a hormone that tells your body to store the food you eat as fat, when it's lowered, you actually burn the fat you have in your body. You become fat burning. That's a huge piece of why the ketogenic diet works. Number 2, if you heard of the Atkins craze back in the day, the ketogenic diet is similar to the Atkins diet in that it eliminates carbohydrates, but it's much different in that you eat a lot of fat. And fat is not bad. Fat innately has nutrients in it. If you're eating high quality fat, it can be a great thing. But you need to do the ketogenic diet in an effective way in order to actually get results. And I'm here to show you some of those pro tips that are gonna be the most effective ones you can do. Personally, I've been on a ketogenic diet for the last 3.5 years. In the last year, I've made some major changes that have allowed me to get really effective at it and keep it consistent. So let's get right into it. Number 1, you need to know macros. So macros are the nutrients in food that are the major things: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. You need to understand that. When you eat a food like a steak, there's almost no carbohydrates in there. It's pretty much all protein and all fat. When you eat other foods like, say, pasta, it's probably all carbohydrates and some protein, but probably very limited amounts of fats. Sugar is all carbohydrates. Oils like olive oil or coconut oil are all fat. So these are your macros, if you will. A ketogenic diet innately is going to be 70 to 80% fat. That means 70 to 80% of your calories, not the weight of the food, but your calories are gonna come from fat that you consume. You're getting rid of carbohydrates and really minimizing how many you consume. So the rest of your diet's going to be protein for the most part. So most people I find do the best when they start out at about 70 to 75% fat to 20 to 25% protein in terms of the number of calories that you consume. So that's about equal weight because you get 9 calories for each gram of fat and you get 4 calories for each gram of protein. So your steak, like a ribeye, is about 50% by mass, by weight, fat, and it's about 50% by mass, by weight, protein. And when you look at the caloric breakdown of that steak, you're getting about twice the calories from fat as you do from protein. And so you're getting about the 70-30 split that we talk about. That was a lot. If you want to learn a more detailed explanation, I have a video on this channel about tracking macros. We'll link it here in the video, and you can go there, and it's very inexpensive and quite simple to learn the process. It just takes a couple of weeks of disciplined training and about $15 of a scale, and then the use of a free app on Android or iPhone, and you can actually track your macros quite easily. But you cannot succeed on the ketogenic diet without understanding macros, because you need to be able to eat food throughout the day in your meals that equates to 70+% fat intake and essentially the rest being protein, around 30%. That will vary based on your athletic performance, your protein demands and needs, and how well you feel, but that's usually about the baseline most people want to start with and do well with. Number 2, and this is going to crush a lot of people. I know going into Q1 this year, a lot of people are going to struggle with this, and this is gut issues, okay? So the keto diet works great from a metabolic and hormone perspective. It lowers insulin, you start to become this fat burning machine, it gets rid of carbs. Carbs and refined sugars in your diet can cause the crashing and cause the cravings. When you adapt over, which is important that you understand how your gut is functioning. So your gut, the way you absorb the food that you eat is through 3 components. You have your stomach, your small intestine, and then your large intestine. The majority of the food that you eat from animal foods, not plant foods that are fibrous, is going to be absorbed through your stomach and your small intestine. Then you're going to be consuming foods in the large intestine, foods that make it through the stomach and do not get broken down and absorbed there and make it through the small intestine and do not get absorbed and broken down there will get to your large intestine. The large intestine is designed really to absorb excess fluids and kind of catch what's left, if you will, from the digestive process so your body doesn't excrete out valuable nutrients and waste. It's also a cavity where your body, probably ancestrally, from our primate ancestors, digested and fermented more fiber and plant foods. And the reason I mention all of this is because fat becomes a much bigger player in a ketogenic diet. When you consume fat, if it makes it through the stomach, through the small intestine to the large intestine, you're going to have gut issues. Your large intestine is not built to handle digesting and absorbing fat. It can handle very minimal amounts. Once you start consuming fats that are rendered, that are melted down, that are processed, oils that are just in such a much more dense fashion than you would have gotten in nature, you're going to be blitzing your large intestine with oils and fats that it's just not prepared to handle. And when stuff gets to your large intestine and it's not absorbed and there's a lot of liquid in there, it's going to turn into loose stool and diarrhea and gut issues and cramping. So I see this all the time with people on keto diets. They have just the worst in terms of gut issues. And the reason it's happening is because they're consuming oils like olive oil, coconut oil, butter, ghee. These are processed oils. They're not natural fat sources. I know this is crazy, but eating raw animal fat, especially on the carnivore diet, has been a game changer for me.
Eat it raw, and that's it.
Stuff like that, it breaks down slowly. It doesn't go all the way through to my small intestine and cause gut issues. If you have constant gut issues, you're going to struggle and you're not going to stay consistent with a keto diet. Now, you can get around this a bit through eating fattier foods like fattier meats, such as steak, bacon, eggs with egg yolks. Egg yolks tend to be okay to actually consume in their liquid raw form. You can also consume fattier vegetable things like avocados. But when you're consuming olive oil versus olives to get the oil, it's so processed down, it's so much more rendered that if you put a lot of it in your body, you're not going to be able to tolerate it. If you're ketogenic and you want to stay keto, you need to manage that. You need to think about not getting too much fats and properly taking in the amount of fat that you want, but also looking at foods. The other thing too I'll mention is there's a lot of products out there that are ketogenic that are loaded with MCT oil, they're loaded with nut butters, and these things can be quite triggering. Nuts are one of the most allergenic, immune triggering foods on the planet for humans. We haven't necessarily ancestrally encountered large quantities mashed up in butters the way that we do now. And so these are other things to watch for. Again, another reason why I'm kind of plugging and why I've gone to the carnivore diet is largely because the gut issues on a ketogenic diet were not something I could handle, and I didn't get benefits from eating avocados and the bacon. And I just think that when you can get high quality animal fat in your diet that's in its raw, real form, you're going to thrive. You're going to feel better. You're going to get the micronutrients and the vitamins that you need from that. And from a digestive perspective, it's just going to help you so much. The last point I'll mention, and the final key I have for you, number 3, is an adaptation. So there is this thing called the keto flu, and it is a real thing. When you shift your body from running on carbohydrates and glucose to running on fat and ketones, you're going to experience a metabolic sort of drain. You're going to experience a downplay in your energy levels, especially if you're maybe a little bit more overweight and not as metabolically healthy. Your body is going to take some time to shift. It's been burning sugar as its primary energy source for probably years, and now you're putting only fat in there. That said, we're incredibly well engineered by nature to actually do this, and once you make that transition, you're gonna feel fantastic. But that adaptation phase can kill off a lot of people who wanna go into ketogenic diets, and it can prevent them from really making it to the finish line and getting into that transition. And I wanna encourage you to stay consistent. For the first 3 to 10 days, you're probably gonna be in a bit of pain. If you're more lean, if you're more athletic, the 3 days is probably more realistic in terms of your transition. If you're more overweight and more maybe metabolically diseased or have issues, from that perspective, it's gonna be a longer transition period. I know it's like the less healthy you are, the more difficult it is to get healthy. And it's tough, it's a cycle, it's a paradox. But trust me, once you get to being ketogenic, you're going to be in such a great place in terms of weight loss and where you wanna be. The other big key with adaptation, the ketogenic diet is diuretic by nature. That means you're going to produce a lot more urine and you're going to be processing a lot more of that through your urine and your body. And what's gonna happen is there's a few things playing in here. You basically need to up-regulate the sodium you intake because you're no longer gonna be eating as much refined foods, refined carbohydrates that are preserved with salt and sodium that you just don't see on a regular basis that you've been getting in your diet. So you're completely stripping out a large amount of sodium that you would normally get from these foods that's allowing them to be preserved and sort of processed. And you're also using ketones and running in a ketogenic fashion. You're gonna be basically peeing out more urine, and so you're gonna need more fluid. And carbohydrates innately as well bring more fluid into your body with that sodium that they come with. So you're eliminating fluid and sodium from your diet, and you're essentially utilizing more of that through this process and through being ketogenic. So you need to actually up your sodium intake. Now there's a small set of people in the population who are, I guess what we'd call sodium hyperresponders, where higher sodium intake can elevate their blood pressure. And if you already have hypertension in your history, or it's something you're dealing with, or it's a real issue for you, then be careful, talk to your doctor about this and just watch it closely. But typically it's a very small subset. We're talking 5, maybe 10% of people. Most people, myself included, are consuming on a ketogenic diet and a carnivore diet, I'm consuming 5 to 7 grams of sodium a day. Grams, that's a lot of sodium. I'm salting literally everything I consume liberally. And I can tell you firsthand, if I don't do that, I start to cramp. My muscles start to cramp. Sodium that I'm getting from the diet really helps me balance out the potassium and the magnesium and the other electrolytes in my body. And it's really critical when you're managing the keto flu that you add in quite a bit of sodium because your body just needs that adaptation. You've completely stripped out a large amount of sodium that you normally would be taking from these refined foods and processed foods and carbohydrates, as well as water. And so you need to upregulate both of those to really compensate for that. If you make it this far, I'm really proud of you. Thank you so much for watching. This is going to be an awesome journey if you can execute on these 3 pillars. It's amazing when you can do a keto diet without gut issues and you have great electrolyte balance. And that sounds kind of simple in and of itself, but I think these are the biggest issues the majority of people encounter. They just don't balance their electrolytes. They experience major gut issues because of the quality and the type of fats that they're consuming. And when you understand how your gut works, how you're really needing to sort of take in natural volume as well as forms of fats, then you can really take advantage of this diet and you can see all the benefits of actually what it does for your health and your vitality and your weight loss and all that's there. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this, if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, comment, let me know if you have experience or what's been the biggest key for you as far as executing on the ketogenic diet heading into 2020. And if you're interested in the carnivore diet, I have a guide. I wrote an entire book on the topic. It's actually dropping in January. This video may be out right at the time when it's going live. So check it out. There'll be a link in the description where you can join the newsletter. You can learn more about the book. And as always, I wish the best. I'm looking forward to getting ancestrally aligned and optimizing our health. And I thank you for being on this journey with me.